So for our discussion tonight, we'll be taking a look at punctuation, which is also in continuation to what we had learned the previous week in terms of grammar, range, and vocabulary. Now, using punctuation is important, but what is even more crucial is using correct punctuations. As we grow older, we tend to not use commas properly because of the lack of need when it comes to our work environment. Usually, when you are communicating with your peers, with your colleagues nowadays, we tend to use text language, we use SMS language, and we don't really have um, the need, neither do we see the requirement for proper English structuring in our writings. It is very rare to see or to find emails that stress or that focus on the need to have proper English, unless, of course, you're working in a school, okay? Or you're working in a job that requires you to have really, really, really good English. Now, let's take a look at some of the punctuation errors that are often observed in IELTS test takers. First, of course, we have capitalization. Now, unlike other languages like Hindi, languages like Arabic, where we don't have the concept of capital letters, English, being a language with Latin origin, has capital letters. Okay, now capital letters indicate the beginning of a sentence, number one, and capital letters also indicate proper nouns. When we say proper nouns, we are talking about the names of people, we're talking about names of places, or we are talking about a specific product that is going to have a lot of explanation and a lot of details as we move forward. Now, when you have completed your sentence, you have already disseminated the idea through your sentence, it is important to end it with a full stop, otherwise known as a period, okay, if it's a statement. However, if it is a question, then you will have to use a question mark towards the end. So take a note over here. You can see the first sentence says, eating at restaurants is more expensive than eating at home. So this is a fact, a statement. That is why we have a period or a full stop towards the end. If you look at the beginning, the first letter of the first word is capitalized. Similarly, if your statement or if your sentence is a question, the rule still stands. The first letter of the first word is capitalized, and instead of having a full stop or a period towards the end, we will have a question mark. Okay, now another thing to keep in mind, the sentence structure when it comes to a question is that you have to put the verb first, the state verb first. Okay, when we say state verbs, we are referring to is, am, are, has, have, had, was, were, and so on. Okay, and then all the other auxiliary verbs, do, did, does, and so on. You have to place them first. And then we have the subject of the sentence, home cooked meal, really more nutritious. Okay, so always remember subject plus verb plus object is a statement or just a plain sentence. However, if we're going to reverse it as verb plus subject plus object, then it will be a question. Okay, now we move to the next crucial punctuation mark, that is needed when you are writing a sentence. You cannot have a sentence that goes on for more than 15 or tops 18 words. This way, if you're going to have a sentence that has 25 words in it before it ends, then it will be difficult to comprehend. Okay, it will no longer be a concise sentence and it wouldn't have the proper grammatical structure to it. To bring about harmony and unity to what you are writing, we employ commas. Commas are used for a handful of reasons, and we're going to take a look at some of the reasons where we use comma. The first one says, use a comma between items in a list of 3 or more things. Now, when you make a list, okay, and it has 3 or more than 3 items, you will use a comma. But if it only has 2 elements or 2 items, then you will use the conjunction and between them. For example, it says, most children don't need to read, write, or do math until they start primary school. Our waiter was polite, friendly, and efficient. So this over here, you can see we are talking about 3 characteristics: polite, friendly, efficient. And you can see that after the 2 qualities, when we know that the next quality is going to be the last that we'll be mentioning, we used conjunction and efficient. If you notice, we have a comma here just before the last quality given, okay? We have friendly, comma, and efficient. So oftentimes the question arises that we are already using and. Why do we need to insert another comma? It's like this. This comma is known as the Oxford comma, okay? And there is a function that it follows. If we do not put this comma over here after the word friendly, and we write it as our waiter was polite, comma, friendly and efficient, it means friendly and efficient are no longer separate characteristics. They become one entity. We don't want that. Okay, we are referring to them as separate entities. Polite, number 1, friendly, number 2, efficient, number 3. So to separate them and to not show that they are a group, in fact, they are individuals, we use this comma. Okay, so when you're giving out a list, you can take note of this. This will also give you a plus point. Not many people know how to use the Oxford comma. If you understand the concept of Oxford comma, it will be so easy and it will also be an advantage on your part. Okay, when you are giving out a list of more than 3 things, and before you state the last item of the list, and before you insert conjunction and, add a comma before it, before the word and, to the quality or the item that it precedes. This way, you are showing that we are talking about 1, 2, 3 qualities. We are not clubbing quality 2 and 3 together, okay? They are individual, okay? So this is the concept of Oxford comma. If you read anything that is well written, if you read something that is proofread, something that has a lot of rereading done, you will see that there is a handful of Oxford commas being utilized there. Okay, you can also see here at the top, it says, most children don't learn to read, comma, write, comma, or do math. So here, write or do math, these are 2 separate entities. Henceforth, we have used what we call as the Oxford comma. Okay, if we did not put the comma after write and we say write or do math, then write or do math will be considered as one activity, not two separate activities. Okay, so that is the first use of a comma. Next, you will use a comma before a coordinating conjunction. So what are some of the coordinating conjunctions? Take note. And, or, but, so. And, or, but, so. These are our coordinating conjunctions. When we say coordinating conjunctions, we mean that they are connecting. They act as a bridge between two ideas. If we look at the example there, it says, I like eating at restaurants, but they're expensive. So here we have two contrasting ideas. I like eating at restaurants. And the second idea says they are expensive. So we want to show the correlation or the bridge between the two. Are we trying to show that they are of the same or if they are of the different entity? So henceforth, we use the word but, indicating that it is a contrast. Okay, so therefore we're using coordinating conjunction. We're bringing both the ideas to the top, but the conjunction indicates if the ideas are flowing in the same direction or if they are in the opposite or contrasting direction. Next, you'll use a comma after a subordinating clause at the beginning of a sentence. When we say subordinating clause, these often begin with a preposition or with the conditional if. Okay, so these are conditional sentences. If you look at it, it says, after the subway system is constructed, comma, there will be fewer traffic jams. So here, our subordinating clause is the first part. After the subway system is constructed. When we say subordinating clause, it means for its meaning to be whole, to be complete, we need the second half as well. Okay, when we say after the subway system is constructed, and we leave the sentence as is, we feel like the meaning is dangling. We don't have a subject. We don't know what is the effect. We don't have an object in sight. Okay, so therefore it will rely on the second clause, or it will rely on the remainder of the sentence for it to complete the idea. Okay, so if we come across a group of words that needs the second half of the sentence to complete its entire meaning, those clauses are known as subordinating clause. So if you're going to implement any of your subordinating clauses in your sentences, make sure you will differentiate it by following it up with a comma. Okay, after the subway system is constructed, comma, there will be fewer traffic jams. The next example says, if more people used public transportation, there would be fewer traffic jams. Now, the significance of a subordinating clause is that you can use it as the second half of the sentence as well. Okay, when I say second half of the sentence, it means we reorder the whole sentence here. If we look at the first example, after the subway system is constructed, there will be fewer traffic jams. If I put the second part first and the first part following it, it would read like this. There will be fewer traffic jams after the subway system is constructed. And when we write it like this, we do not need that comma anymore. Okay, Now, why are we doing this? Why are we splitting the sentence into two? And why are we writing the subordinating clause first and then the main clause? Well, it's just range, okay? It just indicates that you know different types of sentence structures. If you find it hard to write your subordinating clause first, that means the result, the ideal result first, then it's okay. Write it in the simplest sentence structure that you know of, okay? So that is about subordinating clause. When you will employ a subordinating clause to your sentence, make sure you will break it away, okay? The segment is broken away from the main clause with the help of a comma. We go on to the fourth use of a comma, and that is use a comma after an introductory word or phrase. Case in point, we are talking also about transitional words. If you remember last Friday, we spoke about transitional words like furthermore, however, additionally, in contrast, and so on. When you will use these, please use or please add a comma almost immediately. You can see it here, it says furthermore, comma, there would be less air pollution. After dessert, comma, we paid the bill and went home. Okay, so whenever you are going to use an introductory word, a transitional word, or a phrase, follow it up with a comma. Now, the next utility of a comma says use a comma to separate non-essential information. A phrase or clause that can be removed from the sentence without changing the meaning. Okay, so these are relative clauses. If you remember relative clauses from one of our discussions, these are group of words in a sentence which begin with a relative pronoun, WH. It begins with who, which, where, when, and that. If you look at it here, look at the example. Tomatoes, which were originally cultivated in Mexico, are used in recipes around the world. So here you can see that we have a non-defining relative clause. When we say non-defining relative clause, it means it doesn't matter whether or not that particular group of words is left in the sentence or not, because they will not alter the final meaning or the entire meaning of the sentence. Our main idea of the sentence given here says tomatoes, which were originally cultivated in Mexico, are used in recipes around the world. What we mean is tomatoes. Okay, we don't really need, or we do not really consider the information about the origins or where they are grown to be crucial. But what we know about tomatoes is that it is used globally. Okay, so whether or not we keep the idea, the information of its origins does not tamper the essential meaning of the sentence. Okay, our main sentence here talks about tomatoes being used all over the world, but us adding in an extra information of where it originally was cultivated doesn't harm or doesn't take away the initial meaning of the sentence. If we are going to add in this optional info, make sure you are adding a comma towards the beginning as well as in the end of that particular phrase. The next example here says, the Grand Hotel, one of the most expensive in the city, is right across the street from the park. Okay, so here we are talking about the location of Grand Hotel. It says right across the street from the park. The information, the additional info that we have there, one of the most expensive in the city. This, we add it, we remove it, doesn't really change the location of that particular hotel, okay? It has been there in front of the, right across the street from the park, and it will continue to remain so, even if it isn't one of the most expensive in the city. Okay, so that is the use of commas. We further move on to apostrophes, and I've seen apostrophes become foes of people who are writing letters, general test takers. Okay, now apostrophes are used when you want to create a contraction. When we say contraction, we're talking about the shorter version of the word. Like do not, we say don't. We are, we say we're. I am, we say I'm. She is, we say she's. He is, he's, and so on. Okay, when you're going to shorten two words into one, we use an apostrophe. It's like a comma at the top. Apostrophes using contracted words is acceptable when you are doing your speaking. However, when it comes to your writing task, then you'll have to ensure you are not using contracted words. Okay? While you're speaking, you can say don't, we're, I'm, she's, whose, he hasn't, and so on. But if you're writing, then I would recommend you to go for do not, we are, I am, and so on. This way, you are, number one, covering your word count, okay? Even if you fall short of one word in your word count, it will go against you, okay? There are chances that they will deduct your scores and bring it down all the way to band 5, no matter how good your writing task is, okay? So we really don't want to jeopardize it. We really don't want to play with fire with it. So when you're doing your writings, make sure to use full forms. And when you're speaking, you can use the shorter forms or the contracted forms, okay? Contracted forms while doing your speaking indicates ease of using the language, and also it exudes confidence. People who are well-versed, people who are proficient at using the language, they do not shy away from using contractions while speaking, okay? So you can do that as well. You can you can allocate the contracted words while you're doing your speaking examination. But when it comes to the writing, stick to the full forms. Now, there is one word that students tend to confuse with the most. It is it's and its. IT apostrophe S and ITS. The first one, IT apostrophe S, is a contraction. It is a short form of it is. Like, it's raining right now means it is raining right now. The second one, ITS, its, is a possessive adjective or pronoun. Okay, when we say possessive, it means belonging to, pertaining to a particular object or a particular idea. The car, the example here says, the car has a dent in its side. So when we say its side, we are referring to the car. Similarly, the bird has plucked its feathers. So when we say that, the feathers belong to the bird. Okay, so we're not talking about any other feather. We're talking about the feathers that belong to the bird. So henceforth, it shows possession. It shows that it is related to or it is pertaining to a particular subject. Hence, we will use ITS without an apostrophe at the top. Now, we can use apostrophe. There are certain places where you are allowed to use apostrophe in your writings. How do we do it? When we add apostrophe s to the end of singular nouns and irregular plural nouns. Here, this is again showing possession. It shows that it belongs to the subject of the sentence. Susan's car, for example, means the car which belongs to Susan. The manager's responsibility translates to the responsibility that belongs to the manager. My uncle's house and the children's books have the same meaning. Now, if the word, okay, is in plural form and already has an S towards the end, do we still add an apostrophe S to it? No, we just add the apostrophe to it, okay? The animals' cages. Now, when you read this, you will not say animals' cages, no, just the animals' cages. You'll pronounce it normally, but when you write it, you use an apostrophe indicating that that particular cage belongs to the animals. The teachers' meeting. And now here, if we put the apostrophe immediately after the R, if we wrote it like this, teachers meeting, then it means it is a meeting belonging to one teacher. But here we have teachers. And then we have the apostrophe following immediately after S. This indicates that the meeting is not only for one teacher. In fact, it is for the group of teachers who are present. Okay, so that is the ruling for apostrophe. Now, we have a little bit of practice that's given there. So we have practice where you have to add the correct punctuation to each sentence. For my students, I will be dropping a PDF file for this, okay? But for the others, you can take a screen clipping of this, or if you're going to practice it from the video, then pause it, do it, and then practice it, okay? We'll be discussing this in our next meeting. Okay? All
Okay, so
right.
this is like an homework.
Yes, this is going to be homework. All right. Okay, so you can, I will drop the PDF of this in your portal. You'll be able to see it as soon as class ends today, and you'll be able to do it. Okay.